Hello friends! Alright, I am back to show you a scene stamping video using this gorgeous church stamp. So this is, of course, a penny black stamp because I love my penny black stamps, and this one is called Winter Solace. Alright, so let me show you what we're going to do. Again, I'm going to use these Staedtler pens. They are a water brush pen. Let me show you in case you want to buy this yourself. 36 double-ended watercolor brush pens. All right, so I got a ton of colors. I got 36 and I'm absolutely loving them, and I'm going to show you some different color combinations that I've done. So I've done like a turquoise and kind of a blue color, and I've done the red. Love, love, love this one. I'm also going to show you some different finishing touches to each of these. And then this one here is the yellow, and I added a little bit of kind of a brown in there. So I'm going to show you using some blue ones. Okay, so I've got my Hampton Stamp Perfect positioning tool, and I love this size because it's the 8.5 by 8.5, just a little bit bigger for my bigger stamps. Then when I'm using my Misty stamps like this, just don't quite fit in there, and so I really love this one. That was the mini Misty, by the way. The Misty would definitely fit, but I have a hard time getting it here in Canada, so this is easier to get. So I've got a piece of cardstock, and this is 4 inches by 5 1/4, and that's going to be my card fronts for all of my cards. And what I've done is I've pre-cut it, and I've got it on here. Now I've got a piece of paper towel just in behind because my stamp is longer than my card, and so it kind of just picks up a little bit of the ink. And I've also got a piece of tape up here to hold this in place. So I have it with the magnets as well. I've started it at 1/2 inch. Now, typically I would always go in a corner, and I love going in the corner because it just keeps it very, very straight, and it's hard to kind of mess it up. But because my stamp is long and I want it to go off my card front on either side, I needed to have it start at 1/2 inch. Okay. So I've got my stamp. It's clean, and well, sort of clean. There's always glitter on everything at my house, but it's clean. And I'm starting out with the 2 of the tones of green. Now, one of the challenges with this Staedtler pack is that there's no names on the markers. So I've gone with a couple different greens here. And what I'm going to do is use the brush tip, and I'm going to basically just brush on ink onto this tree section. So this is over here on this side. Okay, so I'm going to pick up my lid and come over here and stamp my image. All right, I'm going to do this every single time. I'm going to double check it to make sure that my line, my edge here is on that 1/2 inch mark every single time. Because if I don't, then what'll happen is it'll shift. And if it shifts even just the littlest bit, it makes the stamp image blurry, and you basically have to throw it away. So it is worth the extra couple seconds to every single time make sure it's realigned in that corner. And if I'm doing, oops, I got a whole bunch of green there. If I'm doing a one with the image right at the cardstock right in the corner, or I'm doing it like this where I'm starting at 1/2 inch in, doesn't matter. I readjust it and I check it every single time that I stamp. Okay, so now I've got this side, and I'm just going to do that over there. All right, so you can see I've got, I'm going to realign that because it shifts just the tiniest little bit. Okay, so now I've got a darker green, and I'm going to come in. Again, I'm using the brush tip on all of this stamping. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm just going to add a little bit of shadowing. And so it's not an exact science. I'm just putting in a little bit here, a little bit here, definitely some along the bottom, kind of come up on the edges. So now, because I'm doing a smaller amount, I'm doing both sides at the same time. Okay, so I'm just kind of adding a little bit here and there. So you want to do this quite quickly. You don't want to give it much time for the ink to dry. Okay, so you can see how it's just added a little bit of dimension. Isn't that lovely? Now, if I wanted to, I could add a little bit more if I'm like, you know what, I'm just loving that, but I just feel like it just needs a little bit more. Be careful, don't add too much. I know my motto is more is more. Never less is more. Okay, so there's that. All right, I love it. Love it, love it. Making sure it's still lined up. Okay, so now I'm gonna do the church. So I'm gonna use this kind of like a turquoisey blue that's in the pack, and I'm gonna color the whole church with this blue color. So because it's a bigger area, I am gonna do this in 2 sections. So I do the bottom section first. Okay, make sure I got it nice and close that. Okay, make sure it's lined up beautifully. Okay, and then now I'm going to do the top section. Okay, slide that over. And that's it for that blue. Okay, now depending on the color, if I want it to be like super, super bright and vibrant, I could definitely do a second coat. The other thing I could do, and maybe I'll just do it so I could show you, is I can use this original first color for some shading. So over here on this side, I'm gonna just add some shading. Now, keep in mind wherever your marker lines are is gonna show up. So here, there's actually a seam here in the building, right? This is the corner, so I'm gonna just add some shading in there. And then I'm gonna add a little bit over here. So wherever I put lines, wherever I put marker, it's going to show up. So I don't want big, long, streaky, chunky lines that are all kind of by themselves. But you see how it added just a little bit of that shading in there? I like that. So this is another corner here. So I'm gonna just add some shading in there. So see how I'm just kind of zigzagging it so that it's kind of soft and it's not precise. If I do precise lines, that's what's gonna show up with the marker, right? So here's another corner that I'm gonna just zigzag and just add a little bit. There's a corner. Okay. Oh, I didn't double check it. Hopefully it didn't shift. Shoot. No, it didn't. Oh, wonderful. Okay, so see how it added just a little bit of shading in there? I've got quite a line going right here. So I'm gonna actually just add a little bit in here and kind of soften that out because that was where my join line was. And I don't want that to be so visible. Okay, and then I think I'm done with that blue. Yeah, that looks lovely. All right, so make sure I'm lined up, beautiful. And because I'm going in darker colors, then I don't need to clean the stamp in between colors because I'm going darker and darker. Oh, this one had like a gust of ink coming out of it. I might just dab that off a little bit. It's quite a gust of ink there. Okay. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of definition here on this corner and here. Okay, so I want to keep that ink fresh. Stamping that, keeping it lined up beautifully. Look at how wonderful that looks already. Hey, that shading in there. Let's add a little bit of shading here. Right, just don't want perfect marks, kind of want it to look naturally shaded. Just a little bit in here, a little bit in here, get my cross. Okay. All right, that looks fantastic. Now, what I could do as well is I could just take my marker, just kind of add some lines like this. So it's almost like making kind of like little brick definitions. There's a little bit of play of this on the stamp. It's got, you know, the shingles, I guess, is more what it is than bricks. And so I'm going to just play on that a little bit and add just a little bit of that around. Okay. Stamp. Yeah, you can just see how it picks up just a little bit in there. I really like that. That looks really good. Okay, so keeping my stamp exactly where it is, I'm going to use a baby wipe, and my baby wipes are extremely dry, so I just added a little bit of water just to freshen that up there. Okay. And one thing I noticed about the Staedtler markers is that they really wash off the stamps quite nicely. They don't like leave a real permanent hue to the stamp, which other markers definitely do that. So I'm gonna just use a paper towel and tap that off. Oh, the paper towel was covered in glitter. Well, isn't that a shocker? Okay. Okay, so now I've got some clear Versamark, and so now that that's clean and dry and I have not moved it, and I'm making sure that my image is in the exact same position, nothing has shifted, I am going to ink up this stamp with clear ink, Versamark ink. Okay? Stamp that. All right, so now I can actually lift it off of here. If I need to put it back, I can. I just have to go back to that line, but now that I've got my clear ink on there, I'm going to put on clear powder, and we're going to heat set it. Okay, now here's a little thing to notice. You can see right here where I touched it with the green. Unfortunately, there's not much I can do there. But right here is where the stamp, and I've had this problem with all of these images, is that the stamp just touched right here. So before I heat set it, I'm going to take a dry, clean brush, and I'm just going to get rid of that powder that was there. Now there's going to be a soft mark there from the Versa, but it's going to be just a soft mark. It won't have powder attached to it, and so that's okay. I'm going to catch it now before it gets heat set. Okay, so I'm going to actually set that one aside because I have one completely ready to go. All right, so here it is, same colors. Now what I want to do is, I had talked in a different video about how I could stamp this, I could cut it out, and then I could mask it on top of my church and my trees, so that when I go to do the inking, it stays white, right? So see how on here the inking stays white. This one's really easy to see it. Okay, so I could do that with a mask, right? Just put a stamped image over top of it. Or here's another really fun, cool trick. So I'm going to take a Versa marker, and I am going to use the wide brush tip, and I'm going to come in here, and so everywhere that I want to keep it white so that it looks like there's white snow on my trees, I am just dusting it, just coloring it, I should say, with the Versa marker. Up here where I want to keep this roof nice and white, I am coloring it with the Versa marker. All right. Then on the other side, I'm going to use the fine tip, and I'm going to come from this peak over, and I'm going to fill in this peak right here with the fine tip of the Versa marker. Okay, I'm also going to fill in the steeple of my church. Okay, and then this line, this is a little tricky. It's a little hard to see with the eye what they were doing. But basically from this tip, this corner, they were going down to the roof line, and this roof line needs to stay white. Okay, so again, just filling that in with my Versa marker. All right. Oh, and over here, I didn't do these trees. whoops, which I'll go back to the brush and just put those on really quick. Okay, so now I'm going to use my clear powder again, dust it on, and then heat set that. So you can see the cloudiness, and that's where I'm going to heat set it. Okay, so I'm going to actually set that one aside because I also have one heat set and ready for us to go. Okay, so here is it, and you can just see it is heat set, and then you can kind of see the gloss in there, and that's where there's the Versa. And so what it'll do is it will resist when we go to put ink on. Okay, so now I'm going to take, I like to just put a piece of paper towel down, and I'm going to start out with my little pathway here. Okay, so what I did is I just used a little bit of tumbled glass and a foam pad, and I took a piece of paper and I just tore it. Okay, and so I'm going to line up the corner of my torn paper with the corner of my church. I'm going to add just a tiny bit of ink, and I'm going to start, and you can actually see how I've got my foam pad on an angle, and I'm just barely touching it. I'm just really lightly dusting across it, just a little bit of the blue. So see how it's so fine. This one I actually did quite thick, and I could do them like that, or I could do them like this. Really, you can do whatever you want to do, but it's just this fun little pretty technique so that you get some definition, some depth going to your snowy walkways, right? Because they would have depth. I mean, we could keep them just flat and white, but I don't know, I like to have a little bit of personality in there. Okay, doesn't that look great? I love it. So I'm gonna actually line this back up, and I'm just gonna add a little bit more because I do quite love it. Yeah, there you go, just a little darker. All right, so I'm gonna set that aside. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some brighter colors. Now in each of these different cards that I've done, I'm going to put a whole bunch. I'm just going to make sure you can see this in the video. Yeah. Okay. You can see I've done different color palettes, different. So I've got pinks and yellows and oranges and purples. And so for this one, I am going to use fossilized amber, and these are all oxide inks that I'm using. I love them. And I'm going to start here in the center. So I'm going to actually start in a circular motion, and I'm going to come up and around my steeple. So what I like to do with these inks is I like to start really gentle, and then I get stronger as I go. Okay, so I'm going to use a little bit of spiced marmalade. And I'm going to start on an outside edge. I like to start on outside edges or against an image so that if I get a really strong dollop of color of ink, I can blend it in as much as possible. All right. And then now I'm going to use some seedless preserves and add a little bit. Now this seedless preserves is dark, so you can see how I am just barely tapping it on. Barely tapping it on. I kind of brush off a little bit, and then I go in and finish the swirls so that it's not too dark, because you know, just barely need any of it, and it just goes on so bright and beautiful. Okay, and then lastly I'm going to put on a little bit of saltwater taffy, just because I want to fill in my areas now with a little bit extra pink in here, just kind of smoothing out and blending my colors together. See how it's just blending those together, all of those colors. So I've got this gorgeous sunset sky. Isn't that lovely? Okay, so let me just set these aside, get these out of my way. All right, I have a paper towel that's dry, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to buff where I embossed. And what it's going to do is it's going to remove the ink where I embossed it with the white, with the clear. And sometimes I have to add the tiniest tiniest bit of water, but you can see how it just picks up and picks off that ink color that's on the Versa and just takes that right off of there. Oh yeah, beautiful. Okay, so there's my background. Isn't that just gorgeous, my image? So I took a yellow of my Staedtler and just colored in a little bit here just to make these look like my windows. All right. Then from the Penny Black Promise of Hope stamp set, which I love, I took Jesus is the Greatest Gift of All. Put it into my mini Misty because I just love how easy it is to control it. Put my stamp up here on the top corner. Sorry if you can see my hair. Making sure it's perfectly straight by lining it up with the grid. Making sure it's in the corner in case I need to double stamp it for some reason. You never know. And that's why we love the Misty and the stamping tool by Hampton, because this is exactly what we can do. So I'm gonna just stamp that there. So see, I just love it already, but if I wanted to make that sentiment a little darker, I can double stamp it because it's in the corner and it's going to line up perfectly because of this corner, because this technique is so phenomenal. It's my favorite. You can tell by how many videos I've done. Now, I love embossing, so I'm going to heat emboss that sentiment because I just love the way it pops it and it just looks so dark and so crisp. Okay. And it just takes seconds and then you get that awesome wow factor. Okay, now I wanted to show you on the backgrounds a few different things that I did, okay? So this one here, I did with embossing paste. I just used some Artist Loft modeling paste and a stencil. And I stenciled on both of these ones. I just stenciled different snowflake stencils I had and then took the stencil off, sprinkled on a little bit of sparkle embossing powder, and then heat set them. So a very pretty way to finish off the technique. And then the card, sorry. And then I put it onto a card just based on the colors, okay? And I like to just put them on a white card and then on the inside, I stamp it with the sentiment as well. And that was also from the same Promise of Hope Penny Black stamp set, this one here that's inside. Okay, so that's one way that I finish off cards. Okay, another way is this. So what I did is I used my splatter brush from Ranger and a little bit of white acrylic paint and then did splatter all over the card. Okay, you can see these different options of colors. Then I take a bit bigger brush and dip a little bit of it into some water and white paint, and then I tap it all over, and that's how I get like these bigger paint splotches that kind of give like almost like two different sizes of snowflake on the card. So that's another fun way, and you can see all these color combinations. And then the last one I wanted to show you is this, and this is using one of my favorite products, which is called Shabby White Embossing Enamel. All right, and so I take this, sprinkle a little bit of onto the lid, then I pinch a little bit with my finger and sprinkle it on top. Okay, now I have to be careful not to move this around a whole bunch, because if I do, there's no glue holding this embossing enamel onto the card. So I take my heat gun and very carefully move that out of my way. I lift this up and I take the heat gun and put it in underneath the card. Now I move the heat gun around. You can see I'm moving in a circular motion, and you can see how quickly the embossing enamel is turning. So what it does is it kind of puddles. So right when you sprinkle it on, each of those granules, the big white ones, are kind of chunky. They're kind of square, kind of blocky. And while I'm heating them, what they do is they round out, they kind of puddle out, and that's how I know that they are heat set. Okay, so I'm going to just turn this and get the bottom without burning my fingers. Okay, there you go. So that is one of my favorite ways to finish a card and to add snow, is by doing that. I love doing the stenciling. I love doing the splatter brush. Don't get me wrong. I love both of those techniques very, very much. But it just depends on what I'm doing. If I remember, then I do the shabby white, because it's hard to do it once you've attached it to the card. So once I've attached it here, and you can actually see this one as what I did, I attached it. So now I've got 3 layers to try and heat through, and it takes a really long time to get it, and it takes a lot of patience because you got to keep moving the embossing gun so that you don't burn the backside of your paper. So when I remember, which you know, is a good idea, then I like doing it now because you do it with just 1 layer and it heat sets really, really quickly. Okay, so now I'm going to take and I'm going to attach these to my blue card front and put them onto my cards. All right, so there you go, that's it. So let me show you all these different options again. You can see the color combinations I've got going. I got like that turquoise color, I got the blue, I got some yellow, this turquoisey color with a bit different background than that one. This yellow has the paint splatter, this yellow has the stencil. I also really love the way the red ones turned out. Just love, love the red, and this turquoisey one as well. So you can see all the different options of this fantastic card. So I hope that you'll give it a shot, give it a try. Just loving these pens and these stamps. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my channel and watch some of my other videos. There's awesome techniques on there. Thanks so much. Bye.